All right. Okay. So anyhow, welcome everyone to Central Wyoming College, and exciting to have Superintendent Degenfelder here and Chief of Staff or Chief Executive Officer. Big honcho, great guy, nice smile, intelligent person, Dickie Shaner. And I just want to welcome you all to, I should read my script ahead of time. No, but it's wonderful to see friends and family of Wyoming here together to celebrate the trades and education and the exciting things we're doing in the state. And I wanted to thank, after this event, we have our students and our two culinary and hospitality faculty here with their students making a really great meal. And we're excited that that is something that we've managed to expand in terms of our efforts of promoting the trades. We're very proud of our very high class culinary program in Teton County, but we now have launched it as well in Fremont County, and in collaboration always with partners. So I want to thank them all and give them recognition, because it's all about the trades, and they're the ones doing the work for the trades for this event. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce friend and great leader in the educational space, Superintendent Megan Degenfelder.
Well, thank you, Dr. Tyndall. Thank you, CWC, for having us here today. Board members for coming early this evening. We also have members of the State Board of Education and the State Board of Career and Technical Education with us here tonight. So it really is just a great collaboration. The new executive director of the Community College Commission is with us as well. I think all of this really highlights the collaboration that's occurring right now in terms of career and technical education and the great initiatives across the state. Tonight is really an opportunity to celebrate the work that has been going on for nearing on 2 years, to celebrate what has come together in this initiative, and then also to look towards the future of how we build upon this, how we look to sustain it here in Fremont County, but also how we look to build it across the state, as this has been a very successful pilot here. Career and technical education is something that is very near and dear to my heart. Really was a key motivating factor in why I ran for this office, coming from the private sector, working in the coal and oil and gas industries, and recognizing how important it is for us to focus our education system on preparing students for real Wyoming jobs, to give them more exposure in those jobs, to see what there is to be offered in the state of Wyoming. As we see this exodus of our youth in the state of Wyoming, I think a huge component of that is lack of exposure or access to career pathways. Many students don't recognize the great opportunities that we have right here in the state of Wyoming, and that are achievable through our local community colleges, through certificate programs, to have a robust life and future here in the great state of Wyoming. This also involves looking at how we better meet the needs of individual students. And we're doing a lot of other initiatives around the state around student-centered learning. You may have heard of the Future of Learning partnership with the State Board, the Department of Education, the Governor's Office, and others, with really this idea of how we meet kids where they are, how we create more competency-based learning, and recognize that it shouldn't just be a one-size-fits-all program in our state. So as I took office, one of my main goals was how to elevate career and technical education. How do we bolster it in the state of Wyoming? How do we make it easier? And how do we get all of these different partners together? And so in delivering on that promise, we made a key component of our strategic plan, preparing students for jobs through career and technical education. Okay, that's great. You've got it in your strategic plan. How do you make it happen? And how do you make sure that that plan doesn't sit on a shelf, but we're actually executing that? So I already mentioned one initiative, the Future of Learning partnership with the State Board and the Governor's Office, our community colleges, the university, that's been around piloting things like competency-based learning. And then as it relates directly to career and technical education, we've done quite a few different things, from revamping the Perkins State Plan in conjunction with the State Board of Education. We reduced our state Perkins plan in half. We also reduced the application process drastically to just create more efficient use of money directly to our school districts. We also worked with the legislature to double the funding for our career and technical student organizations across the state. and also changed the block grant models for our school district around career and technical education, many exciting initiatives. So those were kind of some statewide efforts in terms of how do we get money, more efficiently to our districts, to our different programs around career and technical education. But then the next step was really around how do we get in the weeds and actually help school districts to enhance those programs? And how do we also partner with our great community colleges in doing that? All the while, coming into office, I found myself with a large sum of COVID dollars that were remaining and the need to deploy those fairly quickly and efficiently. And so we knew that career and technical education was a priority for us. Another thing for me that's very important is looking at data when deciding how we fund programs and which ones we focus on. Because I think all too often with government, we end up just spending money on the same things over and over again, not fully analyzing the effect of programs, looking at data to see if they actually work. And so for us, we were looking at where needs it most, where in our state are our lowest performing districts that we've got to move the needle on performance, that we have to support from the state level. And what we found is our 3 lowest performing school districts are in Fremont County. How do we help our Fremont County school districts to see improvements? At the same time, we were working with folks around the state of how do we improve our education of our Native American students? How do we meet them where they are and find ways to improve educational outcomes for those students? So what occurred in December of 2023, Chief of Staff Shaner and I made the trip here to Riverton, and we sat down with the superintendents of every single Fremont County school district. Fremont County is also unique, as you all know, because there are far more school districts in this county than any other in the state. And we sat down and we had a very robust discussion about how do we move the needle for educational outcomes in Fremont County. And to summarize that conversation, it really came down to career and technical education and work keys training, or around ACT. We then also created a Native American education stakeholder cabinet, talking about these same issues. How do we move the needle for Native American students? Met with the business councils of the tribes. And again, we saw perfectly reflected in their feedback was around hands-on learning, career and technical education, and around ACT or work keys. And so that's where we started to visit then with the Central Wyoming College and say, how do we bring all of these things together? And not only was Central Wyoming College willing to work with us on this project, they were enthusiastic about it. I remember Kathy Wells saying, this is what we've been trying to bring together for years. How do we become that centralized place for our school districts in Fremont County to partner with career and technical education? Because the other thing about so many school districts across the state or across the county is that we can't all be everything to everyone, especially with career and technical education, the expense of equipment. How do we come together and get on the same page in this effort? So from then on, a couple months later, we went into an MOU with CWC. And Kathy Wells, I cannot say enough about her work in this effort. She truly took this initiative on and ran with it. And it's been really exciting to see in the past just year and a half how far that we've come in all of this. The focus was really around 3 or 4 different areas. And I should note this MOU also included over $1 million from WDE's COVID funding. That's what we put into this program, and basically formed that MOU with the college to look at expanding career technical education as well as work keys through the ACT suite training. And so number 1, we focused on dual and concurrent enrollment. And so that was around building a software to more effectively do that. And as Kathy, I'm sure will tell you, it has gone from paper and pencil of parents having to navigate that whole system to be able to apply for that, to seamlessly transitioning between the school district and the college when it comes to dual and concurrent enrollment. And as I just heard tonight, just this week, that has been fully launched. And I won't steal your thunder, Kathy, but I'm told that it's being greatly successful already. And so that program is called Canusia. Second was around looking at Pathways to Careers, which I know that we have representatives from Pathways to Careers here with us tonight. But using that type of CTE vendor that has worked around the country at how do you work with school districts? And number 1, how do you look at what every school district is providing in CTE? what their needs are, or what their wants are, and then trying to build those together around a centralized hub that is the community college. And so that's been very exciting. They've worked with all of the Fremont County school districts around pathway options and how they better align those pathway options into the programs that are here at the community college. Third has been around career and technical education equipment. The exciting thing about this is it hasn't just been buying equipment that just is staying within the community college. But one thing that we discussed in that initial meeting is how do we bring the CTE equipment and what is accessible at the college to school districts across the county? And so, for example, there was culinary equipment that was purchased that can actually move from school district to school district, housed under the community college, really bringing the college to them within the Fremont County school districts. Other examples have been around welding robots and additional welding booths that are very exciting. And then lastly was around funding for trainings on work keys, which is within the ACT suite, as I mentioned. ACT provided training that was offered to all of the Fremont County school districts. And that really included things like curriculum, practice tests, to really aid in the mission of getting higher work keys scores for Fremont County students. So I've spent far too much time talking about this, but I'm very excited and passionate about this project because it is a beautiful example of how when all of these different stakeholders in education come together under the same common goal, what we can accomplish in a very short amount of time. And I just can't say enough about all of our partners in this, the Fremont County school districts, the community college. It has just been a great pilot. And I was just in Rock Springs last week and was talking to another community college president that's interested, or they're already starting to pilot something similar. And so my dream for this is how do we take this sort of model all across the state and create really a seamless relationship between our K-12 partners and our community colleges. So with that, I will pass it on to a woman who needs no introduction in this project. I truly, Kathy, cannot say enough about how you have just run with this. And it has been really exciting to see all the work that you've put into it. I can't thank you enough for your dedication to career and technical education.
Thank you, Superintendent Degenfelter. This has been, as she mentioned, a whirlwind project. It has been moving very quickly in some phases, not quickly enough in other phases. So we've been dealing with that. To go into a little bit more detail about how this project has utilized the wonderful funding that came to us from the Wyoming Department of Ed to move these initiatives forward. Superintendent Degenfelter mentioned there were 4 initial priorities with this project, and 2 of them were actually quite simple to implement. So I'll talk about the easy ones first. They were pretty straightforward. We did host all of the Fremont County school districts on CWC's campus to receive that training from ACT on the use of work keys. This was an important component that had been fairly routine in the school districts, but then sort of fell by the wayside. The reason why it was important to reinvigorate is part of the Hathaway Award levels for students that don't score exceptionally high. It is a merit-based scholarship funded by the state. But you can get money that will go a long way to help finish students through their college program in a CTE area if you have a work keys score instead of an ACT score. So getting that back in place for students who may not score as high as they need to get the higher tiers of Hathaway scholarship does allow some scholarship dollars to fund to those students as they transition to college. So that was very important to put in place. So the second part that was fairly easy to at least get started, implementation got a little rocky, but we hung in there and dealt with the problem thanks to the wonderful IT staff at CWC and our partner Canusia. We did have a very manual paper process to register students for concurrent enrollment. So imagine your student comes home from their high school with a piece of paper that they have to manually fill out. The parent has to sign, the student has to sign. It then has to find its way back to the high school guidance counselor so it can be reviewed. and many times got lost or didn't get turned in or didn't get brought home to start with. So students were losing out on opportunities to get college credit for courses they needed to also meet graduation requirements in their high school, taught on site at their high schools. We call that concurrent enrollment. There was a significant gap there. So having software to help us improve that brought us light years ahead. No more does the backpack eat the registration form because it's all done electronically. Parents have told us they love it. They log on, they have a specific PIN number, they go in, they click on their school district, and they see only the concurrent enrollment courses offered at their school district. They don't have to wade through anything to find the school their child attends. They pick the courses they want, register, boom, goes to the guidance counselor. The guidance counselor approves eligibility, and then they're automatically registered once we click a button here at CWC. Feedback from parents and guidance counselors at all the schools is this is a wildly successful piece of software. So we're very, very happy about the advancements that we've made there to bring concurrent enrollment to a point where there are little to no barriers for students and their families to register. The second two components were much more complex. So early in this project, Superintendent Degenfelter mentioned that she met with all of the Fremont County superintendents. They were all essentially turned over to me then to identify what areas of CTE education were they most interested in as being a priority in this project. Every district had the opportunity to pick their priorities. I let them pick 5, but they had to limit it to 3, so we knew what the priorities were. And as we started looking at that data and what their priority wishes were, 4 programs rose to the top without question. Certified nursing assistant courses that leads to certification, the culinary arts, automotive technology, and welding. So those quickly became the 4 areas that we focused significant efforts and a lot of the money from the Department of Education on. We then started connecting high school instructors with college faculty in those areas just to get a sense of where we were, get that baseline, figure out where we needed to go. That was the base for one of the most amazing parts of this project, that collaboration between high school instructors, college faculty in an area related to a CTE trade. Those conversations started very early and have been quite amazing and very beneficial. Definitely a win-win for both sides of that education. So they talked about things related to concurrent enrollment. Where do we have courses in place? Where do we have holes missing? Where do we need to fill in curriculum? How can we move the needle on students that are not excited about attending high school? We have attendance problems. Get them engaged in a trade that they're very interested in. So get the hook with that interest of, I want to do this as a career. I want this to be my job. I want to start that right now. I don't have time to graduate from high school. We use that kind of hook in these classes that the students engage both with their high school instructor and college. And this is where the equipment piece comes in, to increase their engagement, their excitement, and they can see that that high school graduation component of their timeline is important. But then we are pressing and encouraging faculty and the high school instructors to look at how can we shorten that time to graduation and completion of that college program. That's where the pathways come in. Where can we design curriculum so that students can get more meet more high school requirements for graduation, where they're getting more college credit in the courses that are required for their CTE program. Shorten that time to completion is the ultimate goal for all of these pathways we're designing. And those faculty and high school instructors did not hesitate to tell us what kind of equipment they needed in order for that to happen. They had long lists, wish lists, pie in the sky dream lists that they never thought would come to fruition because of the expense, and came to us with these lists of, if we just had this robotic welder, we could train every high school welding instructor on how to use it, It can go to their high school welding shops, or they can bring their students to the CWC welding shop and learn that very new technology they're going to see in industry. Nobody had been teaching robotic welders in this area because the equipment was just frankly too expensive. So every high school welding instructor's been in Fremont County has been trained on that equipment, and it's now incorporated into the high school curriculum and the college curriculum. Same sort of, we also increased the number of students that we can have on campus in our welding bays, knowing that we're going to have an increased number of students want to complete welding programs here. So we needed to have a place to put them. We also needed to have more room when those high school students come and take dual concurrent or dual college credit classes with us on site. The same sort of thing happened with auto. Every auto instructor said, man, if we just had a dynamometer, we would be rocking enrollments in auto. We would engage those students without question. However, it's a very expensive piece of equipment that is stationary. It stays where it is. And they said the most realistic place for that to be where all the school districts can access it is in CWC's auto lab. So we installed this very cool piece of equipment that auto students from all of the Fremont County school districts will have access to. It took a while in the spring to finish training and getting everything all balanced and ready to go, but we are definitely ready to put that piece of equipment to work with our auto students from around Fremont County. So these educators have continued to look to find ways to make sure students are getting those educational and skill-based competencies in high school courses, in dual credit courses to meet college level requirements and hopefully shorten that time to degree completion. So very exciting things are happening there. Lots of students have been on campus from those high school programs, and I definitely think we have increased their engagement and given them a career pathway to focus on that they just can't wait to complete and enter the workforce. So we've definitely seen that impact on students already, knowing that we're just in the beginning of some of these initiatives. So finally, one of the collaborative pieces that I appreciated from the Department of Education and CWC is choosing a vendor for our Career Pathways project. The Department of Education had reviewed some vendors and did observed some presentations, gave some suggestions to CWC. We also engaged with those vendors, and we chose Pathways to Careers to supply the software needed for students to learn about career clusters, learn about the trades in those career clusters, and then design those very specific educational plans so the students know. Imagine your ninth grader knowing exactly what they need to register for as a freshman in high school, as a sophomore in high school. What do I take dual and concurrent? Oh, got to make sure I get onto Canusha and register for those classes. Because if I do, according to this plan, it shortens my time to completion of my CWC program, and I can see that planned out as well. I know exactly what the pathway is to enter my career in the trades, the career that I'm most interested in. So we hired Pathways to Careers to provide this service. The CEO of that company is here tonight, so I would like to introduce Dr. Joseph Goins, the CEO of Pathways to Careers, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about that product and its benefit.
Well, thank you. And I will first like to thank the Department of Education. We started this journey, I think 18 months ago with a Zoom phone call. And it's super exciting. And they put me in touch with Kathy, who's just been a delight to work here. I always begin with a quote. One of my favorite quotes says, "How do we help students find what they're fitted to do? Secure an opportunity to do that is the key to happiness." John Dewey said that in 1911. And I always remind everybody, it's as true today as it was in 1911. How do we help students find what they're fitted to do? Better yet, secure that opportunity to do that. It's been our mission from day one. We believe very passionately that if we can transform the life of an individual student, we can transform your local communities. So to echo your comments at the beginning, we want the students to see the opportunities locally. And one of the things we do is we map it. And so one of the things we started doing with Kathy early on is
You might just press enter for me. But one of the things we did, early on is we think about education that leads to employment. So how do we help students think about education through the lens of employment? What is your motivation? What is your passion? How do we benefit your local economy as we do that? And then ultimately, we got to empower those students. As Kathy said, how do you give them the structure and the pathway? I love this idea of exposure. We have to create a lot of exposure for students, especially from low-income families. They just don't have enough exposure. And if you can light that light bulb, something goes off. We did this project in another community, another state actually, and we saw a 60% increase statewide in students wanting to pursue CTE. And it is all about just saying this exists for you here locally. These are great opportunities. So we think about this through the lens of education, employment, benefit your local economy, and empower the students. And our model that we worked with Kathy and the department on is very simple. We start by providing local data. So how do we provide that local data to the education policymakers that need to see where the job market is? Where are those jobs? What are the wages? And what are the trends? So that you can very quickly log in and say, this is what's going on in our local community. How do we change that, right? And then we build resources that we pull down to the student to where we say, okay, here's your career pathway. How do you get there? We started building some academic models. We took math and we said, what's the number one question kids ask about math? When am I ever going to use this? I think we've heard this for about 100 years. We put 650 careers inside a math program. Every math lesson is taught through the lens of a career. And again, that's a way to teach math to say, this is relevant to you. Here's how it's used. And we're excited to be here, excited to expand our partnership and continue to work with Central Wyoming. Kathy's been great, and this has been working with Fremont Schools. We actually had a training yesterday with the school districts. And so great to be here, a great opportunity. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kathy.
So lastly, before we get to questions from any of our media partners here, I would like to introduce Dean Brittany Yates. In all of this work, we can't forget that the student is at the heart of it. We are here for the student and their learning and their lifelong enjoyment of their career. And as Dr. Goins mentioned, it does change our communities. It does improve the lives of those around them. So Brittany is going to introduce one of our culinary students who has received the benefits of some of this initial work. So I'll turn it over to Brittany.
Thank you. So as we in the room and probably those online know, the trades are a backbone of Wyoming. They build our infrastructure, they power our industries, and they provide essential services. For too long, though, so many of us have seen them as an alternative in education. Today, we want to change that narrative, and these students need to know that these are first choice careers, offering stability, pride, and opportunity. That's why we're continuing to focus on strengthening dual and concurrent enrollment in our high schools and having a stronger presence in K-12 classrooms. We want students to see the pathways early and step into them with confidence. At CWC, career and technical education is a top priority and a personal favorite of mine, as I happen to oversee several of those programs. We're invested in these programs and in finding new ways to support and grow them. As you heard, we've recently expanded culinary from Teton County to Fremont County. You'll get to enjoy some of that later. As part of this commitment to growing and empowering students in the trades, our communities and our state depend on a skilled workforce. So together we're working to ensure that message is clear and that every student sees these trades as not just a job, but a future worth investing in. So with that, I'd like to introduce our culinary student, Carly Anastas. I always screw up the last name. She actually started with CWC as a cosmetology student and completed an AAS in cosmetology. She's now pursuing a degree and career in culinary. Perhaps she can create a new venture combining her skills in the kitchen and the salon, which I think is a business many of us would love to frequent.
Thank you. So like she said, my journey started out with cosmetology first, and then I had found my passion in the kitchen working at Brown Sugar. And sadly, my path ended there. So I will be trying to look forward to finding a new path of where my career will start when I finish schooling. And it has been such a pleasure taking these classes here instead of having to go all the way to Jackson because it's a little out of my way, but it has been amazing. Okay. Thank you.
So now if we have questions from the media, we're happy to answer any questions, hear any comments that folks either in the room or who have joined us by Zoom have.
I'll shoot one. So we have automotive, what are some of the other classes?
Specifically, those trade programs that were impacted by this project, is that your question?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so the question, yes. So the question is, what are all of the programs that were impacted? Significantly, the top four that the superintendent chose: culinary arts, automotive technology, welding, and certified nursing assistant. We did help to, using these dollars, equip and supply 2 different school districts with the CNA education room. There are very specific requirements you have to have in order to pass your state inspection to begin teaching. And so we do have 2 school districts in Fremont County that have an approved CNA instructor on site, usually their school nurse in their district, and they're teaching those classes to high school students right on site. So those are our top 4. We have also used what we've learned in those 4 programs to boost a few of the other areas of interest like social media, photography, and computer technology, as well as software development. But those have had a much less impact at this point.
I would just add, I mean, you mentioned it at the beginning, but I think the beauty of it was creating agency with the school districts, because I think all too often, right, the state comes in and says, here's what we're going to focus on, or even the community college says, here are going to be the focus areas, but really asking them on the front end which programs that they wanted. I think that created buy-in with the school districts that, hey, they actually recognize our autonomy as local school districts. And so that was a really, really neat part of it.
Any other questions?
I have a question for the superintendent. So what future plans or ideas do you have for CTE or what have you?
Great question. I see this model that we've created here. I see that it could really expand across the state into different community colleges. I think that we need to now be looking as well at data as it rolls in. I mean, of course, unfortunately in education, you know, we never have overnight results, but I think looking at things like attendance trends with our school districts, achievement trends with school districts, completion within the community college. I think our team has been talking, I see our chief policy officer in the back, her role the last couple of weeks has been really to dig into data and see how do we then fine tune our programs to meet where we're seeing improvements in the data. Because again, we can do all these programs, but if we're not seeing movement, then it's not working. And so that I think is really significant. Sorry, go ahead. Oh. But I think just continuing to grow career and technical education in the state in every way that we can. It's a very exciting time, and I think the state is really much behind it. Even at the University of Wyoming, they're talking about career and technical education, how to train teachers for those roles. So this is only the beginning.
Okay, you started with money from the COVID money, and I'm assuming that that's nearly gone or long gone. How are we gonna convince our legislatures that are in the cut mode to continue to finance this initiative?
So a couple of things. Number one is looking how we can more effectively use our funds at the state and federal level. That's something also that our chief policy officer in the back of the room is working on as we speak. We recently went through a reorganization of the State Department of Education to bring our state supports in with our federal supports in the same team. I met with Secretary McMahon last week in Austin with other state superintendents from around the country. Career and technical education is one of their top priorities for competitive grants. And so we're going to be looking at how we explore that more. They also want to return authority to the states. So they're going to be looking at state education agencies to be the ones to apply for those funds. So I think continuing, that's why we're doing this event here tonight, telling the story of the impact that it's having with our policymakers, with our appropriators is going to be very important. And of course, we were just speaking about the BOCES, the ability to fund dual and concurrent enrollment for our school districts. That's going to continue to be very important moving forward.
I'm a little hesitant to ask this question because I'm sure I'm the only one in the room that doesn't know the answer. What is an automotive dynamometer?
You better answer that one.
I'm happy to answer that question. And we have auto faculty in the room as well. The automotive dynamometer is a tool that you use to fine tune engines. So imagine find issues with a car. So instead of going to your auto repair person and saying, when I get to 50 miles an hour, my car goes clink, 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 clink. They actually take the car, put it up on the dynamometer and run the car that's stationary up to 50 miles an hour and diagnose the problem. Much safer than taking the car out on the road and trying to diagnose the problem where they're driving at 50 miles an hour. You can also use it to fine tune competitive cars, classic cars, but that diagnostic piece is what's the most important part of that tool.
And I knew all of that. I just wanted to give Kathy the chance. Yes.
The pathway to career program, does that just lead like high schools to CWC and what they require, or does it go to other community colleges in the state?
It actually includes information for other community colleges because they're built on career clusters. Sometimes all the programs in that career cluster are not available at CWC. We've listed then where those resources are and have included then follow-on programming where applicable at the University of Wyoming as well.
Kathy, I'm Mark Mather with the State Board of Education. Of course, this is music to my ears as I hear you talk about the program and thank the superintendent for the work around this, this initiative. But a lot of times federal money comes with the question of, so how effective was it? And one of the answers we generally provide is numbers. So as you see these 4 areas, what kinds of enrollment changes have you seen? You know, who's in the pipeline compared to before? That's kind of my first question. And my second one is a lot of times with Perkins money as opposed to COVID money, there's a crucial connection with the local businesses, and that they actually let you know what they think is needed in the area. So I wondered if you could address that idea, the role of the business and the community in helping make these decisions and promote the program.
It's a great question. So your first question regarding pipeline numbers of students, we are just starting to see the benefits of students because of the timing of this project. We're still very early on, but to give you an example of the excitement that we see as far as the pipeline goes, once we had this equipment set up and ready for students to engage with it and see what the potentials are, we had high school students from a number of high schools. Do you remember how many came to tour? 5 or 6 of our Fremont County high schools. In the auto and welding areas, there was almost 100 students in those 2 locations combined for those tours. Comparatively, in the past, when we've had tours with those high school students, maybe we would have 5 students in auto and 5 students in welding. So we are seeing significant excitement in these programs. We hope that continues. Regarding your second question, business and industry is a critical component of how we design these programs, especially in the trades. At CWC, we have advisory councils where we meet with members of business and industry twice a year. We review our programs and they bring us lots of input and feedback in many areas of data that otherwise we wouldn't be able to collect. Many of them are those who hire our graduates from those programs. So we want all the transparent, down and dirty information. How did we do preparing that graduate? How did they do entering that entry-level job in the industry we educated them for? What were their strengths? Where did you expect them to have a different set of competencies or knowledge or skills? So we know where to address that in our curriculum. They also bring lots of updated information on emerging trends, changes in the industry that we need to incorporate into our curriculum. Sometimes that includes equipment needs or changes in software or particular skills. So we can reflect that on our curriculum. But most importantly, business and industry provides that work-based learning for our students, where they can put those skills to work and test drive them and get feedback on how they're doing prior to graduation in the form of apprenticeships, internships, job shadowing, job placement, those types of work-based learning opportunities that are built into every one of our trades programs. So business and industry partners are critical in the success of all of this.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are you seeing an uptick in the number of students participating in the CNA program?
Absolutely. So CNA is one of those programs that limits a pipeline. You can only have a certain number of students per class because the instructor can only have a certain number of students when they go to a clinical rotation for safety reasons. So you have a limited number of students you can educate at a time. In the 2 school districts that we have supported CNA instruction, those sections of CNA, which is about an 8 or a 12-week course, depending on how they schedule it, have been full with wait lists. Our on-campus sections are always full with wait lists. So having additional opportunities open up for cohorts of students to go through is significant.
As a side note, my neighbor girl graduated last spring and she got her CNA. I think maybe when she was a junior, I'm not sure, but she worked all last winter at the nursing home and is in the nursing program at UW. So because she has that experience and those skills, she can go down there and get a job at Ivinson. And she's working her way through school. So
Absolutely.
That was a neat opportunity.
It is definitely one of those stackable credentials, certifications into all areas of healthcare, but particularly nursing. Any questions online? No?
There are no questions online.
Okay.
Dr. Wells, could you introduce our good our welding instructor? Because I think it's great to have him here. We're thanking our students, but lest we forget, we have, I think, an off-back.
Yes, we actually have several high school faculty and instructors that have been working with our CWC faculty from various areas. We have our welding instructor, Matt Drips, here in person. Thank you, Matt. So those types of engagements are incredible, and we're so happy you could celebrate with us tonight. Do you want to say a few last words, President Tyndall?
Sure, why not? We also have, Mr. Goff here from the high school.
Yes, we have Mr. Gott from the high school auto program, and I think we have some others here that I don't remember your names. Please introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Wade Anderson. I'm a auto instructor over at OBHS.
Wonderful.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people to thank in this room, and I really want to thank the superintendent and our partnerships with Pathways to Careers and Kanuja, and so many people in this room. My trustees have been very great, very supportive. We have our board chair, Ernie, over with us today. We got Carlton Underwood, Craig Tolman, we got Alma Law. I'm probably, there we go. We got McGay Hughes and we got Shauna Tartar. And is that all my trustees? I think so. Phew, okay. And but a lot of people who truly support the trades and have the attitude that the trades and CTE is not a second choice. I love it how Dean Brittany Yates described that, because there sometimes has been historically a stigma and it makes no sense at all. You know, oftentimes they make a lot more money than we do. And we ask ourselves, well, why didn't I go down that path? And our teachers who choose to teach and take maybe a break from the field, we really truly appreciate the faculty who are choosing to serve in many ways over making the cold hard cash in the field. And so there's a lot of gratitude I have for all those involved in the trades and the teachers who do really great work, and it keeps our economy going. And they're just great professionals. And I also have some of my staff here. I got a VP or two in there, and I want to thank them all, and especially Dr. Kathy Wells, who has shown really great leadership in this area. And our partnership with Wyoming Department of Education is amazing. We're so lucky for like us. This is great. And so helping us connect with the school districts is really good. And we love the vision, and we're very lucky to be a part of that. So thank you everyone for being here. And without further ado, let's get some food.